What's up, everyone? It is the Tesla Beat 128. How's it going?
What up, dude?
Hey, hey.
And of course, so Brian could not join us this week because he is in China checking out some cool cars out there. But we have Amy. How's it going?
Hi, great to be on. Still have a little bit of a cold, but getting over it.
Yeah, and I just want to comment to everyone that that is a real background. It is not CGI. She is so very, very jealous, but glad that someone gets to enjoy a hot fire for us.
Yeah,
He's in
I'm
front of
up
an
at Lake
80-inch
Tahoe, so
TV.
it's appropriate with the snow and the skiing and everything else.
Nice.
Yes, Tahoe just got dumped on in the past like 2 weeks, so they're good for a while, but I know it was a big scare for sure. Well, with that, shout out to Insta360. Go check out their cameras. Their information is in the YouTube description. And shout out to Insta360 for supporting this channel. But yeah, let's get into it. Never a dull week in the Tesla world. And thank you, Joe, for putting together this deck. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the Grok Imagine just get better every single week. I don't know, you just somehow have a way with these themes, but all right. With that said, Tesla stock is at 441. It's been a little bit soft. It's had kind of had that big ramp up to it. What was it like? About 465 8 or 458, whatever that the chart says. So it's about down about 3%. But again, this is year to date, so you're really only talking 9 days of the year. If you look year over year, it's a lot better. But I like to look at start it fresh of how the year to date is going as we continue to do this podcast. All right. So with that said, I think a decent amount of us got to watch the new interview with Peter as well. I just thought potentially it sounds like it's a podcast called Moonshots, but I think maybe if for those that did watch it, we could go do a quick roundtable on what you thought about it, if there was anything that stuck out to you, maybe some topics. I know he pretty much covered anything and everything. But what did you guys think? Not all at once.
I thought it was a pretty good interview overall. I didn't like the way they were interrupting him, but then Hans reminded me that if you don't, like Elon will just ramble on. So but I
What?
like the good. I mean, because
Not
there were
just
just a
ramble
few.
on. He'll say the same things that, you've heard, the
Yeah,
exact same phrases and points that we've heard a million times. And so, yeah, I know that. I mean, there was another interview. I think it was when Jordan Peterson interviewed him that a lot of people made the same criticisms. Like, Jordan, stop interrupting Elon. Elon's smarter than you. Just let him talk. Yes, that's true. But then you get the exact same Elon interview you've already heard 10,000 times.
yeah. He had some really good points. I like what he said about China. He's like, I don't know if they're just listening to me or if they just happen to be doing the same things that I've said they should do, and they're. But it's pretty crazy that China's like the only one listening to him. They're doing great on solar, battery management, battery storage. Like they are just crushing it in everything, and just America's just lagging behind, and all we have is Elon. I also liked what he said about the other thing about like just it was just a good interview overall. There was just a few takes from it, but go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, I would agree with those things. I think one of the aspects about Peter and Moonshots is that they're very enthusiastic about what's going to be possible. They don't really ask, like, what are the things that are going to get in the way. And so it's great to see, them really unleash the full optimism and enthusiasm that Elon has about like what's possible in the future. Making claims like we're going to be launching, hundreds of gigawatts worth of solar into orbit in like 5 years from now, or, he didn't really commit to a specific timeline on that. But in a not too distant future, like those are some insane claims. And he's been talking about those types of things on X more recently. But I do wish that we had gotten a little bit more, okay, like what are the bottlenecks to accomplishing those things? And like, yeah, we need to set these big goals. What are the things that could get in the way? So I would have actually liked to hear more of that, but that's just like you're never going to get those questions in that specific context. But yeah, it was great to see Elon like pushed into more different areas and, you know, asked to give answers on things that he doesn't typically comment on as much. So yeah, I enjoyed it overall. Now that said, I wouldn't say it's like the best Elon interview we've ever gotten either. So
Yeah, my take on it was that I was impressed once again, which is not a surprise, at just how much knowledge Elon Musk has of each and every one of his companies, exactly what's in flight, his big project, his big goals for each of them. And the thing I was most excited for with Tesla was the mention of the Terafab again. Tesla getting into the chip business is exactly what Hans was just talking about. He might not be saying that would be a bottleneck for a ramping Optimus, but it will for sure be a bottleneck for ramping Optimus that there's only couple companies out there between Samsung and Taiwan Semiconductor that are manufacturing these chips. So if Tesla gets into the chip fab business themselves, along with the close partnership with Samsung with the Texas factory, now Tesla has removed that large bottleneck. So we might have a lot of robotic startups, but none of those other robotic startup companies out there will have access to the same level of chips that Tesla will. And that's just one element of the supply chain that they're already trying to get all the pieces lined up in place for a massive scale of production.
Yeah, on that note, real quick, before you go, John, I wanted to say that I wasn't too keen on them even doing a terafab. You know what I mean? I know it's a great idea, but I mean, just the processes and everything, even um the other guy, Bondi, was talking about it too. Like it just there's a lot involved in it. But when you realize that he's making a specific chip for specific things, you know what I mean? I think it could move along a lot quicker than what I'm envisioning for a fab. So I'm interested to see what they do. I know he doesn't want to do it, but it looks like he has no choice because he's realizing his vision for the future is just freaking so insane that he's realizing like there's going to be a shortage. He doesn't want to be stuck with the shortage.
Yeah, well, when you think of like, I mean, think of lithium refinery. When would you ever think Tesla building cars and doing everything that they would ever do something like that? And what did he say years back? He's like, "Hey, anyone, can you start a lithium refinery? We'll give you business if you can do it, right? If the, that's a great industry to start it. Like, just sending all these indicators." And here it is now where it's like they're spending billions already with Nvidia and all these other chip companies. And what is he looking at? He's looking at really the scale of this. And it could also be one of those things where it's like, Elon just doesn't sit here and bluff, right? He could, a lot of these people will say, oh, we need XYZ to get there, right? If he wasn't thinking about actually executing to get there, then they wouldn't be thinking about making a chip fab. You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things. But if he truly believes that, hey, we're gonna get to do a million unit line in Fremont, and then or sorry, a 10 million unit line in Fremont, and then 100 million in Texas as far as Optimus production, this is all indications that he's going to do it. And I think it's just one of those things where, when they think of the scale, they're going to look at the plan of like, okay, how do we start? That's always kind of the hardest thing, and make a production line that will come. But also too, what are steps 8 through 10 that we have to get to this mass scale? And I think that is, clearly where they're headed. So at least for me, I mean, the chip fab is just going to be part of it, as much as it's like, do they need to take on another thing? No, but if they see that this being a blocker, then they're going to need to do it. And then same thing with the AI data centers, right? It's just one of those things where, again, I still think we're a lot further away than people think, right? Just because, you need to be able to create the type of products, and things like that. Because I think it's going to be a little bit different than what obviously the satellites that they have today, from my understanding. But it is just going to be just crazy to see how Tesla's energy is going to be integrated with potentially XAI and SpaceX on these satellites. So, but yeah, I don't know. Overall, I didn't, I thought that he projected a lot of like, futuristic things that are going to happen, and talked a lot about like same thing with the sun, right? Like we have all this free energy, and no one's taking advantage of it. And so if we're in space, we'll be able to do that. So, but I don't know if there was like anything specific that was, I think he continued to talk a lot about the future, but correct me if I'm wrong, if there was something like super futuristic that he shared that he hadn't done before.
Well, I think Hans's post that he commented on it. We'll have Hans talk about this in just a second. It was really a key to the interview too. That the idea that he just dreams bigger than anyone else, and as long as you keep dreaming big and trying to accomplish these big, huge, enormous goals, and those were on full display in this interview, you're just going to keep winning. Hans, do you want to talk about what your post was? I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, so the premise of the post was just that a lot of people talk about the AI race that we're in right now like it's a race. And, a race, if you understand a little bit about game theory, like the basics are there's two different types of games. There's finite games, which is what we typically think about when we think about games, like, a football game or a 100-meter dash or these types of things. Like it's a clearly defined game with a clear set of rules in clear ends and beginnings. And, that's anytime we invoke the word race, that's kind of what we're talking about. And, we think, hey, the first person to AGI, like they are the winner. And, that's like this definitive statement of their future prospects and their position in the world. And the reality is there's a whole nother type of game that's called the infinite game. And that's just like, there's no real set rules. There's no beginning. There's no end. The players can rotate in and out. And in an infinite game, the way that you win is you just stay in the game. So that's one of the things that Elon is looking at Google right now, and they are just firing on all cylinders. Elon has had a relationship with Demis Hassabis that goes back to the late aughts, early 2010s at the latest. And there was a conversation that I've heard talked about that happened between Elon and Demis somewhere back there where, they were kind of having a pissing contest, like who's going to do bigger things. And Elon's like, well, I'm going to go to Mars and that's going to be the biggest thing ever. And Demis is like, well, I'm going to create artificial super intelligence, and my artificial super intelligence can follow you to Mars and, continue on into the stars. And that, I think, is the genesis of a lot of how Elon is thinking about the evolution of this technology, and his understanding of his opponent in this game is that those are Demis's ambitions. And, regardless of Larry Page and Sergey and his, relationship with Larry and his concerns about Google as a overall company, Demis is kind of his own thing. He is a pure scientist, and he's one of the first movers of this modern wave of AI, and his work has been defining for what this is and what it's going to. And so, Elon looks at him as a legitimate peer competitor, and maybe even someone who is further into the field than he is. And so when you have someone like Demis with the resources of Google, and then you see them executing like they've been executing now for the past several years, and building the types of products at the type of scale, it's quite likely that Google will actually be the first one to produce human level artificial general intelligence, if you want to call it that. It's hard to define exactly what that is, that they'll actually reach that goal before Elon is able to reach that with XAI. And so he's stepping back and saying, okay, if they do that, how do I try to compete with them? How do I stay in the game? What, is that the end of the game or not? And the answer is no, it really isn't. That as long as you can stay in the game, even if they cross that, artificial finish line first, and you can redefine it to a much larger goal, you can say, hey, what if we actually think about civilization on the Kardashev scale, where it's like, how much energy can you usefully consume and then turn into work? And that's where you're like, okay, well, when he's talking about how much energy the sun produces and the fact that we, don't even have a tiny fraction of that we are consuming here on Earth among all the different form factors. That's why he's talking about that. Because he's saying, okay, now like he's treating artificial general intelligence as an inevitably solved problem. And he's thinking about what comes next after that. And what comes next after that is really just accelerating civilization up in prosperity. This is where the sustainable abundance comes from, the amazing abundance comes from. And that's where he's like, okay, if I dream bigger than Google and Demis are dreaming, like Demis never said, hey, I want to turn humanity into a Kardashev level 2 civilization. That actually is bigger than just creating artificial superintelligence. And now that we have, the pathway from here to artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence is fairly clear, it does give him the opportunity to say, okay, what comes next? And really start specifically planning, okay, how do we get from here to that even bigger next goal?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
awesome.
Judge, you want to talk? Yeah, no, it's yeah, and that, so I think a couple things. It's really, I think you put it, I think you explained that well. I saw the comment, but I think there's sometimes when Elon's just talking, it's just, you're like, dude, you're on a different planet and from another planet as well too. But it's, I think that's exactly right, right? It's just like, especially like when you think of when Elon was thinking of like Tesla, when he thought of like, okay, I'm going to bring a roadster. What are the thing, or a sports electric vehicle, right? What are the things that are going to be the biggest and blockers, right? It's going to be range anxiety. It's going to be the battery. He just thought of all of those things. And so in this one thing, right, as you were saying with, with his competitors, it's like, that's one thing he can do, outdo people. It's literally going to be, okay, if we accomplish AGI and then artificial super intelligence, I guess it's ASI, whatever you want to call it. Like, what's next? Where do we go? And I think what's kind of crazy too now is when you think of all of his companies and the stack that they have and how they're converging more than ever, it's crazy because, again, whether it's building, a base on the moon and eventually Mars, or it's again, just going into the future. That's not only is that going to be what he's thinking about, but he can also just dream in that direction, unlike anyone else I've seen. Go for it, Amy.
Yeah, the other what I thought was really critical as an investor from the comment that Hans got back from Elon Musk is when you're investing in a growth company like Tesla, the question always remains, is the most of the growth behind us or is it still in front of us? And with the answer that Hans got, that I am playing this infinite game, I'm going to just keep dreaming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. This is how Elon Musk gets Tesla to an $8 trillion valuation, dreaming of terafab factories, of roadsters that will hover and be the last great car that people drive themselves. I mean, all these big ambitious goals that he has is exactly why the major growth, in my opinion, of Tesla is still in front of it. And I thought that it was just such a key moment. And it was a brilliant observation by Hans.
Well, and I did love the, saying, hey, I'm not just focused on, these big ambitious goals. I'm also focused on making sure that we don't die in between here and there to accomplish those things, because that will blow up. It's like, hey, if we accomplish this thing, it will be great, but the chances of survival are close to zero. Then, that doesn't necessarily make you feel good as an investor. But with Elon's history of execution, his history of keeping all of the risks in mind and managing them better than almost anyone on the planet, then we can have a pretty high level of confidence. Not only, is it possible that we'll accomplish some incredible, crazy things because Elon is setting his sights so high, but also that he's not biting off way more than he can chew. And he's going to, there's a classic saying in investing, a lot more companies die from indigestion than starvation. And that's where you try to grow too fast, you get out over your skis, you do things that you're not ready to do, and you end up dying in the process. And that's something that, yeah, I have very low concern for with Elon and how he's thinking about this.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, let's get into some Yesla news. Joe, do you want to hit this one, or I don't know what you can see from your
Oh
phone?
yeah, no, I can't really see it that well, but I remember that there is a new Model Y coming. 350 miles of range is pretty crazy, but yeah, like I noticed that they seem to be doing continent specific things. You know what I mean? Like each continent's getting its own special version of what this could be and what it could mean for them, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so piggybacking on what Joe said, so there's the new standard long range in Europe, which makes sense, but this one, um, and it looks like, I wonder if it's the standard long range. Does it say? I don't know if it's all wheel drive or it's probably rear wheel drive, I would assume, right? Because it's going to be built the same as the regular Model Y standard. But with that said, yeah, 350 miles. It's going to be a new trim specifically in Europe. So at least, I think that this will be really helpful. But yeah, I would assume at this point, I feel like at some point, and again, I don't know, it looks like, what is it, 29,000 KR, what is it, chrono or whatever. But either way, I would assume at some point that they're going to probably even get rid of the Model Y standard. It just is not going to make sense, but we'll see. The European markets can be a decent amount different than here in the US. So, but either way, if you're in Europe, this is launched officially, and go check them out. All right. So, legacy auto runs from growing industry pays off. So we're seeing the big losses that everyone's taking, right? GM takes a $6 billion hit as as cost of backing away from EVs. Ford is taking another $19.5 billion hit as it pulls back on EV plans and halts the F-150 Lightning. So it's kind of funny, right? Like 4 or 5 years ago, everyone's making EVs because Biden's saying Mary led, and then next thing you know, it's just, here's literally like the dumpster fire that is the repercussions of. Yeah, I think just instead of like making a great product and doing it half baked, I think what you see here is just they did it because that's kind of like what I think the previous administration was pushing, and instead of making a great product. And right, so because they wouldn't be in this situation if they really tried to scale this and do it right the first time.
That is absolutely correct. It's kind of unfortunate because you can see that Rivian is ramping up, and in a couple of the slides later on, you'll see that Lucid is also making moves. But here we have Legacy Auto that you're just willing to become Blockbuster. It's just really wild to witness.
Yeah, especially when it's just, I feel like it's been so clear, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and obviously I know we like live and breathe Tesla, but sorry, Amy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I agree that this is just really unfortunate because this is a lot of jobs that we're talking about with the legacy auto manufacturers. But I haven't seen the deck. I don't know if we're going to get to it later, the NVIDIA announcement about their Alpha Mayo. But this is kind of what happened to the big licensing opportunity that we thought that there was for FSD, is that none of the OEMs have a compelling EV to put it on if they were to license FSD. First, they have to have their equivalent of a Model Y, easy to produce mass market car with a low cost to put that's going to be compelling for the public to buy before they can worry about licensing FSD, and they simply don't have it. If you look at Ford, they also made an announcement that they're going to be introducing in 2026, I think volume production 2027, the new EV platform that they claim is more like the Model Y, where they've done a lot of in-house controllers. But they said that they've been working on that for 7 years. And that just goes to Elon Musk's point that if the legacy auto doesn't have something that's compelling now, it's going to take them 7 years to develop it. And anything that they license from Tesla or from NVIDIA, also going to take 6-7 years before you see any type of competitive pressure. So I thought that was really interesting. But I'm really sad to see this actually playing out the way that we feared that it would.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think the big point, like the big takeaway, is that when all of these companies were announcing, hey, we're going to make this EV, we're going to make that EV, and we're going to sell in these volumes, and we heard the classic headline, Tesla killer, Tesla killer, Tesla killer, and we were all like, this is all crap. None of these companies have what it takes to build this. This is not about assembling components from suppliers. This is about a groundbreaking new technology, a platform shift. You need to be vertically integrated at this stage if you want to succeed in this. And people laughed at us and they said that we were stupid and, smart money was going to run over us. And, now all these years later, these companies that are supposedly such great automotive manufacturers still can't figure out how to produce EVs profitably. And now, facing the tsunami of EVs out of China, it looks like that's never, ever going to happen. Like, EVs are clearly the future. And I don't know of any company besides Tesla that is an OEM at scale manufacturing EVs who stands a chance against what's coming out of China. And it is really sad, to Amy's point, that there's going to be a lot of jobs lost. There's going to be a lot of destruction. And all of this was pretty obvious and has been for a number of years. And this is what we have been saying. And it is unfortunate to, watch the rubber meet the road as these companies continue to crumble. We'll see, how much longer they can hold on. Just because EVs are the future doesn't mean that ICE is dead today. And so we still have, a number of years left of ICE manufacturing and little niches where, people can kind of carve out a business, but all of those things are going to be much smaller. They're going to employ far fewer people. And it's going to be, a much different future than what we are used to for the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I will say that, one thing that's interesting though, so if you see all these, legacy auto manufacturers here in the US, just, pretty much giving up on EVs, I think, what is that going to do to the automotive market, right? At least here in the United States. That's going to, especially because when you look at Ford, I think Amy, I saw that announcement too. Like, if you're thinking 2027 and then a full, more autonomous features in 2028, that's especially with where Tesla is today, you're going to be behind in 2 years and to a point where it's like an exponential factor where there's no catching up anymore. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that there's going to be markets for other vehicles, whether it's like, because clearly Tesla does not have like a van yet, right? They have the Robovin, but again, like I'm just talking like a family van, right? That's a huge market. So there's gonna be vehicles and types where I think they're just gonna have the market because Tesla is not in it. But when you think of when it comes to buying a Toyota Corolla, even a Camry, a Honda Accord, and the Civic, what are you going to go to? You're not, especially if it's autonomous, right? Especially if it can drive you. And that's why you see the Model Y being the best-selling car in the world for 3 years in a row. But I'm just saying it's only going to get worse as these companies, if they do not have a vehicle that can drive it, right? It's not just having a safe car, low maintenance. Like that's been the reason why Tesla has sold so many vehicles already. But now you add in, now it can drive you, and people are already seeing that. But it's not going to make sense to have anything else. And again, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I would love to know out of like 10 cars, outside of like, maybe the F-150, but like just like how many are sedan, how many are kind of like that CRV, which we already know is pretty big given the Model Y being the best-selling car in the world. But it's like that's where I think that they would make more inroads in, because again, Ford's not going to be able to put out a compelling four-door sedan, and they've even botched a bunch of them anyways. And again, you look at all these other companies. So I think that it's just going to be, if they're not licensing Tesla or another company that is where they need to be, then at this point they're just going to become like, some of the brands that have just disappeared, right? That we've seen. All right, so oil giant bets big on Tesla. Joe, did you want to hit this one?
Yeah,
Let me
I
see.
think it's pretty cool. BP has a mega charger location in Ontario, California, and if you can see it from there. They did some renderings that they were going to be making a semi EV charging solution, and you could tell like Tesla was going to be powering it from the images, but this is the reality. It's happening. It's going down, and it's pretty cool to see. Like, I mean, BP was always ahead of everybody else. I mean, like I think they stepped out before Shell did in the area of like battery storage and solar and stuff like that. And so, I mean, they're pretty smart, but still pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I think they were some of the first to actually have white labeled Tesla supercharging equipment of any kind. And then, if they end up being the first to develop the mega chargers or white label mega chargers for trucks, that will be, it's hard to say, I guess, since there's going to be a lot of like, do you count the ones that are at Pepsi? Are those branded Tesla or are they branded Pepsi right now? I haven't seen pictures of those, but it is great to see. And the thing that we have to remember, I think, for the growth of semi is that we are going to be back to the same situation as a company that we were in 2012 when we started to roll out Model S sales and had to build out a charging network at the same time that we're delivering vehicles, because there is not sufficient charging infrastructure for the semi at all. And so this is going to be, a large effort by Tesla Energy to develop this next level and next tier, industrial scale charging infrastructure. And so it is great to have lots of partners. I like the new model that they have for Tesla Energy to do a lot of these things where other people are participating in the cost of actually deploying all of these assets. And I'm looking forward to seeing, how the scaling of the mega charging network for semi actually compares to supercharger early on.
Yeah, it's gonna be, I think either way, I shout out to BP. I think, they've, as Joe was saying, I definitely have seen them just way ahead. Even Shell too, right? It's like we know we're an oil company, but we can, we're more of an energy company, than just a gas company, right? And so, I think that that's going to be huge, and especially now that Tesla, I believe they launched, what was it? Their first one was in Florida somewhere, where it was like, it was their superchargers, but it was a different brand. And so, like I said, I think it's going to take a village to make this transition happen. And I do know that if Tesla is getting interest from some of these companies to buy semis, they're going to look at what's the route and how do we put these chargers in, right? You see a couple of these places like the Tesla Oasis, they own the land. They'll just be able to throw them in and they have space. I know they have space there on, some of the far sides. I don't know if they would do it just because it's more of probably for private owners. But either way, it's just good to see either way.
And Hans, because I'm right next to Pepsi, I see it all the time. They're Tesla branded at the facility.
Wow. Yes, they are. All right, jumping into next. I actually, so it's kind of funny. This is, Tesla, they will make, especially some of their smaller businesses, and I say smaller being like still huge, um, especially the Tesla energy side. I mean, they're, insanely profitable and it really help the bottom line numbers for Tesla right now as a whole. But they just drop things like this, like when they did the new mega pack and all that other stuff. But here, they just made a new Tesla solar panel, and so just super cool. Um, and it looks like they've already started deliveries on residential solar panels. But had you guys heard anything about this? I feel like, this is just, again, it's just stuff that it's like I didn't hear about until literally Sawyer posted about it.
Yeah, it's definitely been an under the radar, part of the business recently. And this is a very respectable, it's kind of like a Goldilocks solar panel, that it's a good mid-tier thing. It has a lot of respectable, specs. It's not the best kind of in any category, but it's like good at a lot of things all at the same time. And while it's not like the cheapest panel that you could get by itself, or maybe the best price for performance, when you factor it into like system level cost, it actually is really good combined with the Tesla Powerwalls. And so I think they just tried to go for a good solid panel that addresses a lot of different types of use cases and would be kind of like a good all-rounder. And it is a great improvement over what they had previously. I think it'll be faster to install and cheaper to install as well. And yeah, so it's like a good update to that. We definitely need to see like volume start to scale. Like if Tesla somewhere in the United States and somewhere inside of Elon's ecosystem, we have to really start cranking up the volume on US based, or at least outside of China based solar PV manufacturing. And so I don't know if that's going to be something that this is a signal that we're going to start seeing from Tesla, or if that's going to pop up somewhere else. Obviously, if he wants to put, gigawatts and gigawatts worth of AI satellites in space, those are going to be powered by, space grade solar panels. And Elon's going to have a great source for that, or make them himself. And so I am, I'm still kind of waiting to see what develops on that front. And I'm hoping that this is an indication that we'll start seeing that from Tesla sooner rather than later. But yeah, that we'll just have to wait.
Well, you could tell from his interview with Peter that he is well aware of the energy wars that's happening, even though if people aren't. He's aware of what China's doing and how great they are with solar panels and how many they're producing. And you know what I mean? Like, and people sleep on it, but just like you had pointed out, like over a year now, I think, about the drones and all that type of stuff. I mean, this is like China is making moves. And I mean, you could hear it in Elon's, realization in that interview, just like, okay, China's doing it. Nobody can touch them, but we still got to make a move. We still got to have a great number two. You know what I mean? Like, it's still got to happen. And just to like let China run away with it is just not an option.
Yep. Go for it, Amy.
I completely agree with both what Joe and Hans said, and I think that was very insightful. When Hans was saying earlier, where are the blockers to Elon Musk plans? Often, where we see what the blockers that he thinks they are is we see the moves that his companies are making that we weren't expecting, and those moves are his initial response to where he sees the blockers being. And so, power, we all know, is a big one for AI. We saw the mega block come out, and Tesla is going to start to produce more of those electronic power control units, including transformers, which is going to be a big blocker. It's a start in manufacturing of a complex product where they start small, like Hans was saying, don't take more than you can do, and then they can use that as a springboard to do more. And that's the exact same thing with a solar panel. If they're going to put data centers in space, and if we want to see Tesla involved in that, we want to see Tesla manufacturing already, so the components that Tesla can manufacture for those data centers in space, including solar panels. So this is the first test of getting Tesla into the solar panel supply chain beyond the solar roof, trying to create a compelling product similar to the Cybercab. When they actually produce the Cybercab, most of the pieces of it Tesla will have already produced. This is very much a pattern with the Tesla. It's very much a pattern with Elon Musk to start taking care of the blockers before they ever develop.
Yeah. That's dropping a lot of dimes there for sure. All right. Well, with that, I feel like the next level of autonomy is going through tunnels. So I actually got to experience the FSD. It actually looked like the Robotaxi build. But I got to experience, and you'll see actually on the right, this is Black Model 3. They have an iPad that they use really for the Boring Company's tunnels, at least here in Vegas. But what was crazy was just seeing the Model Ys being able to navigate through miles of tunnel and then to be able to go on surface streets. So you're talking of full integration of every type of scenario you'll deal with, whether it's tunnels, whether it's streets, and they're fully integrated now. So, like I said, if they're ever, I would love to see more of these tunnels. We have a video coming out with a behind the scenes look at really a whole walkthrough of the operations with Steve, who was an early SpaceX employee. But it really is just crazy to see. Like for me, it was like, of course they're gonna integrate both of these because this is one Elon company, another Elon company. But to see it actually happen was just next level, especially how perfectly it was able to go into the tunnel, go out of the tunnel, handle stop signs, and then even here, there's exits as you're going through these miles and just knowing which one to go out of and which one to skip. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's really cool the operations that they have there. They're going to be unlocking the airport pretty soon, which will the Las Vegas airport. And once they do that, once because I think with CES they're doing about what 35,000 rides a day or something insane like that. But for once they do the airport and unlock some of these other stations, they want to be able to handle 100,000 rides a day, and that will automatically put them into, I think, the top 10 to 15 in the world as far as like passengers being moved through. And it will, once Vegas is up and running, it will make them the second biggest in the country as far as tunneling goes. New York, and then Tesla, Vegas Loop, and then DC. But yeah, it was cool. I mean, like I said, like the whole concept is Teslas and tunnels. And of course, you need to make one that can drive itself.
You know what's
So
really wild about all that too is that when in that interview with Peter and David had asked him, like, did you see this happening, like the convergence of all your companies? And as smart as Elon is, he had no idea. He did not see it, but it just worked out in his favor.
yeah,
It's
it's
wild, man.
oh, I never would have thought. I mean, like 6, 7 years ago when I was getting into this whole space, like SpaceX rockets, I would not think solar panels in space, like, I would not think that he has like some, AI, XAI. I wouldn't have thought of that, right? It's
Tunnels
just
on Mars, like
yeah, I mean, it's just Optimus robots. That was another huge one I never would have thought about, even though the car's a robot. I just would not thought, oh yeah, Tesla's gonna make a Boston Dynamics, bot. Like it just would not have been in my. And now I got like 4 of them behind me, so it's just. All right, so Joe, you want to hit this one?
5 million milestone. This is pretty cool. I mean, the drive units are pretty awesome. I think there's another slide later where you're realizing that they're gonna make they have a patent for a drive unit that's gonna be like a multifaceted drive unit. But I mean, Tesla, we just keep saying it, right? Tesla is just moving and hitting on all cylinders, and again, not to bring up the Peter interview again, but he had made a point of how like we are at such an inflection point and we are in the greatest of times, and you can see it with all these companies, all these robots, everybody's hitting their stride. And I can only imagine that this is what the industrial revolution was like when you realize like, oh man, I had horses last week and now cars are everywhere, and you know what I mean, and then you start to see like electricity and all this stuff. It just started hitting, and man, we are just in it, and it's been like this it seems like it's slow, but in a timestamp in history, like the past 10 years have been like a blip. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that the big difference is when you think of that. I actually, I was watching one of these shows that just like, was actually you were seeing that transition happen, right? It was like the cities where it's like you saw the motor cars, or at least at the time, happening, versus the people coming in from town are still on their horses. And then you see that transition of like the parking spots being the state, like the little post for the,
Yeah.
you know, where you put the
Becoming
horses,
parking
those are like
stalls.
disappearing. But here, this is all digital, and that's, you know, the whole thing is that this stuff is just digital. And so the stuff that you like, you know, doing Google searches or going to one app to like, hey, let me go find where I can get the best black shirt, you know, where's the best sale, like, we're all going to be going to one app that aggregates 15 other apps, right? We're not going to be going to Best Buy and searching. It's just going to become one app where you go to stuff. And so it's just like, I think it's a little bit easier to kind of not see the insane change that's happening because it's digital. And that's also too what was interesting is Elon said that the first jobs that are really going to go are going to be the digital ones, because
Yeah.
that's all stuff that pretty much anything on a computer, the AI is going to be able to do it, right? And like if you're clicking a button and typing on a keyboard, those are the things that are probably going to be most impacted.
I think it's wild watching people drive every day. It's so weird.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. All right. Hitting on the next one. Okay. This is, you know, this was interesting because it's like, you know, when you think of China, right, they obviously have their government, which is controlled by one party, and they can kind of just push whatever agenda and unblock a lot of things. And I think that that's going to be kind of similar to what you see in Europe, especially Europe, where I can see, you know, us becoming like a Europe when it comes to regulation if we keep throwing up all of these laws, right? Because no one's removing laws; they're just adding amendments and adding more laws. And so, you know, I do love that. You know, it looks like that there is a U.S. committee. The U.S. House committee will be holding a meeting on bills to ease autonomous vehicles deployments without human control. And this is what we need to do, right? And again, I don't know how this goes from like federal level to state, but I do know that if, you know, the feds can lead by example and unblock a lot of these things that are there, it's going to be huge. And just because, like I said, it's how do you tackle autonomy by just going one city to the next, like you see with Waymo? It's slow. It's like very bureaucratic. Like it's just like it's almost like you got to go kiss the ring, you know, for 15 different people. And you know, but for us, it's like thankfully with Tesla, they've tackled it in a general way. So it's just like at that point, it's just unlocking. If you can unlock, let's say, a whole state or, you know, major regions, that's going to be a complete game changer. But it needs to happen like this in order to help us continue to stay ahead.
I think that a major driver for this is the fact that the Tesla semi factory is about to be ready to produce the next generation semi, and at a massive level. There will many people want to see the trucks on the road safer. This is also a method of interstate commerce, which is very solidly within the purview of the federal government to make regulation for. So that can drive regulation, allowing for autonomy across state lines that then can be trickled down to the passenger level and without being easily able to legally challenge. So I think that these things are kind of coming together at a really good time. And I agree we need a federal framework for this. There's also just the idea that we have the interstate highways. There is a precedent for transportation regulation. Airlines are regulated on a federal level. An airline doesn't have to go and get permission for every state that they operate in to be able to fly flights. So again, there's legal precedent here, and we need Congress and our legislature to go ahead and drive this forward, because the US does not want to get behind, especially when Tesla is in the lead. It would be a shame to waste that.
Yeah, especially as this race is heating up, like the last thing you want is, you know, just the regulation to stop this. You know, we have to do it in a safe manner, and Tesla, like I said, they're really truly tackling, you know, things to be safe. I've never seen a company, or really any of Elon's companies, versus other companies just take the safety as seriously as they do. And a lot of people will say that they do, but the measures that Tesla goes through, and really all of Elon's companies, it's really just it's crazy. All right, so CES is happening this week and wrapping up. And one thing I will say, you pretty much could not walk through there without seeing AI or robots. And that's literally what everyone is talking about. Boston Dynamics had a humanoid atlas, works autonomously in the Hyundai factory in Georgia. And then also too, yeah, I mean, you just see a lot of companies building out various use case of robots. So I feel like the robot space is heating up. But again, I will say, over the next like 3 or 4 years, until these start being produced, you're going to see so many of these just being displayed. It's a way to, and I'm not saying something like Boston Dynamics is doing that, but it's kind of like these AI companies, right? They know that if they say AI enough, like they're going to get millions, if not billions in funding. And it's the same thing with these robots. If you can just display it to do a couple of things, you're going to get thrown a bunch of cash without the ever actual purpose of like really building it. It's just to get money. So it's going to be exciting to see this again, seeing Tesla, where they're at versus a lot of these, other competitors who've been doing this like a long time. I mean, I think this is Boston Dynamics, they've started heating up now because I think Tesla lit a torch under them. But outside of that, they've been running that dog for years.
Well,
And
that's what I was gonna say because you see this happen a lot recently, especially once Tesla got in good with Jensen. You started to notice a shift in things like this Elon effect, right? Like where I mean, you just hit on it. Like Boston Dynamics has been around for well over 20 years, and they've never freaking sold a humanoid robot to anybody. I mean, the best they did was a $75,000 dog, and that was crazy. But but now you see them trying to like make sure that they hey guess what, we can do this and we can do that, and now you have Jensen using, this is a guy who I think there's a saying about during the gold rush, some of the richest people were the guys that were selling the shovels and and pitchforks. And Jensen is that guy. You know what I mean? Like Elon came to him and was like, hey, I need all these chips. And Jensen's like, you know who uses our chips? Elon. You know what he uses them for? Self-driving. You know what you guys can do? You know what I mean? And so now you have this guy just freaking just crushing it with like just betting on Elon and making sure that everybody else is, while they will talk bad about Elon in some facets and not really believe anything he's doing, but then as soon as they are able to do it, like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, you know what I mean? Like vision is incredible. So it's just like it's just like one of those things. And kudos to Jensen for being ahead of this in a way that I think is gonna help everybody realize what they need to do, especially here in America, because you see it in China all the time. Like they're just making moves, man. It's just kind of sad to watch, you know, a country that put so much out into the world with like all the greatest innovators, you know what I mean, come from here and stuff. And then you just see all this stuff happening. China's just like, oh yeah, no, that's a great idea. And it runs with it and just freaking takes off. And so here we are. But man, it's crazy, crazy time.
I would like to touch on what Joe just brought up because this is really important. NVIDIA made a big announcement as part of their being the picks and shovels provider for the AI revolution. They have 5 different industries where they're trying to provide software stacks and AI developer tools. One of them being healthcare, one of them being self-driving cars. This was new. It got a lot of headlines. NVIDIA has entered the self-driving space. For NVIDIA, it is a very, very good move. There was a lot of talking about how long will the chip market go on? What are they doing next? They're positioning themselves by having 4 startups, tools that work together, these open source developer tools of software that works best with their hardware to be, and 80% of startups go with open source to sell a lot of hardware going forward. It's a very good move for NVIDIA. It is also at the same time not something that's going to create competitive pressure for Tesla for, according to Elon Musk, for 5 to 6 years. at a minimum. And why is that? Why is that? If they showed a demonstration of a car going 5.6 miles around San Francisco using their new foundation model with their vision only software copying Tesla, there's going to be 5 to 6 years before the competitive pressure. And that's because this model was trained with only a few 100 million miles. Tesla's been trained with billions of miles. And so thereafter, we saw Elon Musk trying to explain where NVIDIA fits in. Jensen's his buddy. He's not going to trash the company, but he's also going to point out where Tesla's competitive advantage is. And so then we saw Elon's statement like yesterday that it's going to be 14 billion miles before any company has gone from something that looks okay on a demo to actually solving all these long tail scenarios that you need to operate an autonomous vehicle. And then people started spinning out of, oh, does that mean that the robotaxi is now delayed? And these are, again, two separate things. For another company, it's going to take them 14 billion miles of data. Tesla has their FSD data, which we're not at that number, or it's 10 billion. I'm sorry, 10 billion. We're not 10 billion yet, but Tesla also has the shadow mode that's been running with FSD, which is hundreds of billions of miles of data. And what happens in the shadow mode is even if you don't have FSD on in your car, it's running in the background. And every time what you do is different than what the AI model would do, it flags that, it sends a video clip to the developers, which is a long tail scenario. So Tesla already has the equivalent of 10 billion miles of long tail scenarios because of the shadow mode advantage that Tesla has that nobody else would. So Elon Musk didn't even bother bringing it up. And so until we hear something from him that there's some type of delay in the robotaxi program or these guidelines that he set out, understand that what he's been talking about is what will it take for a competitor to mirror what Tesla has done, rather than this is talking about Tesla's timelines or what Tesla's doing individually in-house.
It'll be interesting. I think shout out to I believe it was Matt, but either way, they were just saying like, is this vaporware? And I think with NVIDIA, I don't think they're gonna put out something that's vaporware, but I will say that demos are easy, right? Like so are prototypes. And some of these companies, whether it's Waymo, Zoox, some of these companies that have, autonomous vehicles out there, that's like the real deal, right? And so until we start seeing them in a service that's being run, and then again, it's you can run all these small operations, but at scale, like, is the goal just a small operation, or it's really to scale it? It's just a different mentality. But with that said, um, looks like we wrapped up another week. It's been definitely a busy time here. So I want to wish you all a great week. Thank you, Amy, for coming and hanging out with us again this week. I hope you have a great time if you're going to be on the slopes. Enjoy that fire for me, and for all of us. And thank you again to Hans and Joe for the deck, just for being great co-hosts. Please patronize them, follow their channels. And we will catch you guys all next week on episode 129. Have a great week, everyone.